When we imagine George Washington, we think of a stoic leader, standing tall in his powdered wig, the commander who led the American Revolution and became the first president of the United States. But behind that composed image was a man who suffered greatly, especially from one peculiar, painful secret: his teeth. Few know the full truth about Washington's dental suffering. Over the years, this suffering shaped his public demeanor, impacted his health, and even distorted his physical appearance. More fascinating still, the tale of his false teeth has been warped by centuries of myth-making and patriotic storytelling. The most persistent myth that George Washington wore wooden teeth. It's a claim so widespread, it appears in textbooks, children's cartoons, and even guided tours at historic sites. But it's completely false. The truth is far stranger and more revealing than fiction. Washington's false teeth were crafted from a mixture of materials: ivory from hippos, gold wire, human teeth sometimes bought from enslaved people, and even lead. The details are both grotesque and illuminating, revealing a man burdened by pain in an era of primitive dental science. The truth is far stranger and more revealing than fiction. Washington's false teeth were crafted from a mixture of materials: ivory from hippos, gold wire, human teeth sometimes bought from enslaved people, and even lead. The details are both grotesque and illuminating, revealing a man burdened by pain in an era of primitive dental science. The myth of wooden teeth. For over 2 centuries, one of the most persistent myths about George Washington is that he wore wooden dentures. From classrooms to comedy sketches, this idea has become so embedded in American culture that many people accept it without question. But where did this story come from? Historians and dental scholars have long debunked the wooden teeth tale. There is no known documentation, dental record, or physical specimen that proves Washington ever wore dentures made of wood. In fact, wood would have been a terrible material for dental use, porous, prone to decay, and unsanitary. So why did this myth catch on? One theory suggests that early denture materials such as ivory became stained over time, developing fine cracks and darkening to a wood-like appearance. To the untrained eye, this discoloration may have looked like aged wood. Another possible explanation lies in 19th century storytelling. As Washington's legacy grew into mythic proportions, Americans sought to humanize their national hero. The image of a great leader humbly enduring with wooden teeth made him seem more relatable, more rustic, a man of the people. School textbooks in the 1800s began repeating the wooden teeth story, sometimes adding imagined details about how Washington carved his own dentures or wore splintered planks in his mouth. These embellishments, although completely fictional, were often passed down as fact. Popular media in the 20th century reinforced the idea. Cartoons, comic strips, and museum gift shops capitalized on the quirky tale. Even some presidential museums continued to reference the myth well into the late 1900s. Despite overwhelming evidence against it, the myth of wooden teeth persists. It reflects a broader truth about historical memory, that stories, not facts, often shape our understanding of the past. Washington's dental decline. George Washington's problems with his teeth began early in life. By the time he was in his 20s, he was already experiencing severe dental pain. Letters written by Washington in his 20s and 30s frequently mentioned dental discomfort, extractions, and failed remedies. Scholars believe his early tooth loss was due to several factors. First, dental hygiene at the time was extremely poor. Brushing was rare, and people often relied on powders or cloths instead of brushes. Sugar, increasingly common in colonial diets, exacerbated tooth decay. Second, Washington frequently used medicines containing mercury, such as calomel, to treat illnesses like smallpox and malaria. Mercury, while common in 18th century medicine, is highly toxic to gum tissue and bones. By the time he took the oath of office as president in 1789, Washington had only one natural tooth remaining. His dentist, Dr. John Greenwood, carefully preserved this tooth, even building a denture around it to help anchor it in place. This solitary tooth eventually had to be extracted as well. Greenwood kept it as a memento, reportedly attaching it to a small gold locket. Washington's correspondence shows he was deeply embarrassed by his dental condition. He often requested extra wax or cushions for his dentures and avoided speaking in public when possible. His journals and letters describe persistent mouth pain, difficulty chewing, and even disfigurement from the dentures pushing his lips outward. It's no exaggeration to say that Washington spent much of his adult life in dental misery, yet he rarely complained publicly. Like many aspects of his life, he bore it with stoicism and silence, an image that fit well with his mythic reputation. What were his dentures made of? Contrary to the wooden teeth myth, George Washington's dentures were sophisticated by 18th century standards and crafted from a mix of organic and metallic materials. Over the course of his adult life, he wore at least 4 distinct sets of dentures, each using various combinations. The materials included human teeth, often purchased from poor individuals or enslaved people. Animal teeth, typically from cows, horses, or hippopotamuses. Ivory, especially hippopotamus ivory, prized for its strength and resistance to cracking. Lead, used to mold and hold components together. Gold wire and brass springs, used for structural support and tension. These dentures were not only uncomfortable but heavy and prone to malfunction. The springs pushed the jaws apart, forcing constant muscular effort to keep the mouth closed. Washington's most well-documented denture was crafted by John Greenwood, a New York dentist and former soldier in the Continental Army. Greenwood became Washington's personal dentist and documented the construction and maintenance of the president's dentures in great detail. One of Greenwood's dentures preserved in museum collections today contains human teeth set into ivory with gold springs and lead frames. The teeth are arranged in layers with clear signs of wear and manual filing. Greenwood was careful to note that he never used wooden materials in any of Washington's dentures. In a letter, he wrote, "I have made none of them of wood." Some dentures included real human teeth. Records show that in 1784, Washington purchased 9 teeth from enslaved individuals, paying roughly £6. While it's unclear whether these specific teeth were used in his personal dentures, the transaction highlights a disturbing aspect of 18th century dental practices and slavery. The practice of purchasing teeth from enslaved people was not uncommon among the elite of that era. Enslaved individuals, having little choice, often sold their teeth out of desperation or under pressure. The buyers were wealthy Americans and Europeans seeking a more natural denture. The resulting dentures, while visually closer to real teeth, were still primitive by modern standards. They often caused sores, jaw pain, infections, and difficulty speaking. Washington's letters detail frequent adjustments and discomfort. There are also references to him carrying small tools and wax to adjust the fit of his dentures throughout the day, a constant reminder of their burden. Today, Washington's dentures are preserved in several institutions, including the National Museum of American History. Modern analysis through X-ray and scanning electron microscopy confirms their complex structure and composite origins. Pain, image, and presidency. Being the first president of the United States came with extraordinary challenges, defining executive power, uniting a fragile republic, and setting precedents for all future leaders. But behind the scenes, George Washington fought a personal, unrelenting battle with his own mouth. His ill-fitting dentures were a near constant source of pain. The ivory and lead would rub against his gums, creating sores and irritation. The springs pushed his jaws apart, causing discomfort and distorting the way he spoke. According to accounts from visitors and aides, Washington often avoided public meals. He rarely smiled, and his speeches were short and deliberate, not out of stoicism alone, but because prolonged talking was physically taxing. In portraits painted during his presidency, especially the famous works by Gilbert Stuart, Washington's mouth appears unnaturally firm, even bulging slightly. This is believed to be the result of dentures pushing his lips outward. Stuart himself reportedly complained that Washington sat like a stone during sessions and refused to relax his jaw. The result was a series of portraits with a reserved, guarded expression iconic, but masking the real discomfort underneath. Washington's self-awareness about his appearance ran deep. In letters to his dentist, he obsessively requested adjustments to improve fit and appearance. He even had one denture filed down to appear less bulky. This attention to dental aesthetics wasn't vanity, it was leadership. Washington understood that his public image was tied to national unity and strength. A broken smile could be perceived as weakness, and in a fledgling republic, weakness was dangerous. The psychological burden of chronic dental pain also affected his mood. Personal letters reveal frustration, anxiety, and moments of isolation. His discomfort may have contributed to his decision not to seek a third presidential term. Moreover, Washington's dental condition served as a constant reminder of his own mortality. In an era without anesthesia or antibiotics, every infection posed a serious threat. Some historians believe he feared blood poisoning from infected gums. In this context, his perseverance becomes all the more impressive. Despite his physical suffering, Washington carried out his duties with restraint, dignity, and endurance. He maintained a calm presence, not because he lacked pain, but because he mastered it. Buying teeth from slaves? Perhaps the most disturbing chapter in George Washington's dental history involves the acquisition of human teeth, possibly from people he enslaved. While this topic is sensitive, it must be addressed honestly and directly. In 1784, an entry appears in Washington's financial ledger stating, "By cash paid Negroes for 9 teeth on act of Dr. Lemoyne, 6 pounds, 2 shillings. This record is clear. Washington paid enslaved individuals for their teeth. What's less clear is whether the purchase was voluntary, whether the teeth were intended for his personal use, or whether they were sent to a dentist as raw materials. In the 18th century, purchasing teeth from the poor or enslaved was a common but morally troubling practice among the wealthy. The elite believed real human teeth provided a more natural fit and appearance than animal ivory or porcelain. Desperation often forced the impoverished to sell their teeth. For enslaved people, however, the concept of choice was murky at best. Even if money was exchanged, the power imbalance rendered any consent questionable. Some historical interpretations suggest that Washington may have acted benevolently, that he paid more than market rate, or that he never intended the teeth for himself. But the ethical dilemma remains: participating in a system that commodified human bodies. It's important to place this in historical context. The 18th century was a time when medical science was primitive and slavery was legal. Even progressive leaders of the Enlightenment held views now recognized as deeply flawed. Still, acknowledging Washington's involvement in such practices is necessary to understand the full scope of his legacy, both its greatness and its contradictions. Many modern historians now call for a balanced view, to neither idealize nor demonize, but to analyze with clarity. Washington was a man of his time, but also a man who shaped the future. In recent decades, museums such as Mount Vernon have included these facts in their educational exhibits. Some display replicas of the dental ledger and openly discuss the uncomfortable truth about Washington's dentures. This transparency is not about eroding admiration for a founding father, but about deepening our understanding of history, humanity, and the cost of progress. Dental technology of the 18th century. To understand George Washington's dental struggles, we must also understand the limitations of dental science during his lifetime. In the 18th century, dentistry was more an artisan's craft than a medical profession. Tools were crude, knowledge was limited, and pain relief was practically non-existent. Most dental care was performed by barbers, blacksmiths, or traveling tooth pullers, not by trained doctors. The primary solution to dental pain was simple: extraction. Toothaches often ended with pliers and blood. There were no antibiotics, no sterile environments, and certainly no anesthesia. Patients drank alcohol or bit down on leather straps during procedures. Infection was common and sometimes fatal. Dental tools of the era resembled instruments of torture. The tooth key, for example, was a metal crank used to twist and wrench teeth from the jaw. The risk of cracking adjacent teeth or tearing gum tissue was high. Fillings and crowns were rare, and when attempted, they used materials like lead, gold foil, or wax. These provided little relief and often worsened decay. Toothbrushes, as we know them today, barely existed. Wealthy individuals like Washington might have used boar bristle brushes, but most people used cloth, fingers, or chewed sticks. Toothpaste consisted of powders made from charcoal, burnt bread, crushed bone, or brick dust. Despite these harsh realities, some advancements were being made. The first dental textbook, Le Chirurgien Dentiste 1728 by Pierre Fauchard, laid the foundation for modern dentistry. Fauchard introduced concepts such as dental hygiene, tooth anatomy, and prosthetic design. He proposed that sugar caused decay, an insight centuries ahead of popular understanding. In America, dentistry slowly began to professionalize. Figures like John Baker, Isaac Greenwood, and his son John Greenwood, Washington's dentist, began developing dedicated practices. They experimented with casts, gold plates, and more refined techniques. John Greenwood, for instance, innovated in using hippopotamus ivory and custom shaping dentures to individual mouths. He also built a foot-powered dental drill, a crude ancestor to the modern drill to work on cavities. Even so, the average dental experience in the 1700s was one of agony. For Washington, each procedure, whether fitting a denture, extracting a tooth, or filing ivory, meant enduring intense, prolonged discomfort. That he continued to lead, smile, however strained, and engage in public life under these conditions is a testament not only to his fortitude, but also to the early roots of dentistry as a profession in America. Portraits and artistic clues. Beyond letters and dental records, clues about George Washington's false teeth can also be found in his portraits, especially the iconic paintings that shaped the image of America's founding father. One of the most telling artworks is the Athenaeum portrait by Gilbert Stuart, painted in 1796. Although unfinished, this image became the basis for Washington's face on the US $1 bill. In the portrait, Washington's expression is stern, his lips tightly closed, and his jaw slightly protruding. Art historians and medical experts believe this unusual facial tension is due to the pressure of ill-fitting dentures. Stuart himself reportedly complained that Washington was difficult to paint. In his notes, Stuart wrote that Washington sat like a block of marble, refusing to relax his mouth. The denture pressure made natural expression nearly impossible. This unnatural firmness appears in other portraits as well. The 1795 Lansdowne portrait by Gilbert Stuart showing Washington in full regalia displays a similar tight-lipped appearance with subtle swelling around the mouth. Art experts now believe that the facial proportions in these portraits, especially the lower jaw, were intentionally exaggerated by artists trying to balance Washington's swelling. In essence, painters compensated artistically for dental disfigurement. Other clues appear in miniature portrait medallions, such as the ones painted by Charles Wilson Peale and James Sharples, where Washington's jawline is angular and unnaturally pronounced, further suggesting the influence of dentures. Interestingly, Washington himself was aware of his altered appearance. In letters to his dentist, he often requested that new dentures be made less bulky or better shaped to avoid distortion. But even with adjustments, the damage was done. His portraits became a permanent record of how the early technology of dentistry affected even the most powerful man in the country. The art world's treatment of Washington's smile or lack thereof is symbolic. It reflects both reverence and restraint. A leader who carried the weight of a nation on his shoulders while quietly bearing the pain in his jaw. The last tooth and Greenwood's role. By the time George Washington became president in 1789, he had only one natural tooth remaining. This single survivor was located in his lower jaw and became a symbol of his long and painful dental history. Washington entrusted his dental care to John Greenwood, a highly skilled and innovative dentist based in New York. Greenwood had served in the Revolutionary War and brought both patriotism and precision to his dental work. Greenwood took great care of Washington's remaining tooth. In one of the earliest known instances of tooth preservation, he designed a custom denture that used the natural tooth as an anchor. He believed that as long as one tooth remained, it was better to build around it than to rely entirely on artificial structures. This technique gave Washington slightly more comfort and stability in one of his earlier sets of dentures. But over time, Even this last tooth became inflamed and painful. Eventually, Greenwood had to remove it. He did so with care and, out of respect, kept the tooth as a memento of his most important patient. Greenwood reportedly mounted the tooth in a small gold locket, which he kept for the rest of his life. It became a personal relic, a mix of science, service, and symbolism. John Greenwood's work with Washington went beyond mere dental mechanics. He corresponded with the president regularly, sending replacement parts, wax for cushioning, and detailed instructions for maintenance. Greenwood also strongly opposed the myth of wooden teeth. In a letter to a colleague, he insisted no part of the president's teeth were made of wood. His meticulous craftsmanship and pioneering techniques placed him among the earliest American dental professionals. He's often considered one of the founding figures of modern dentistry in America. Greenwood's relationship with Washington was deeply respectful. He addressed his letters formally but included personal touches such as concern for the president's comfort and dignity. The fact that Washington maintained such close contact with his dentist speaks volumes about how central dental issues were to his daily life. Even amid governing a new nation, his mouth remained a battlefield. Greenwood's legacy lives on not only through his contributions to dentistry, but through the preserved dentures, instruments, and correspondence that historians still study today. Legacy and historical reflection. George Washington's false teeth tell a story far deeper than oral hygiene. They reveal an often overlooked dimension of power, pain, and perseverance, a hidden biography etched not in ink but in ivory, gold, and human bone. His dental struggles humanize a figure too often frozen in myth. Behind the marble statues and stiff portraits stood a man who endured great suffering and who carried that pain silently so as not to betray weakness during a fragile moment in American history. His dentures were technological marvels for their time, but grotesque by modern standards. They serve as a reminder of how far we have come in medicine and how much of history is shaped by what science had not yet discovered. Washington's use of teeth from enslaved individuals challenges us to confront the ethical contradictions in the founding of the United States. He fought for liberty, yet participated in systems that denied it to others. His smile, if it can be called that, was built in part on exploitation. Yet, this does not erase his contributions. It complicates them, giving us a more honest, nuanced picture of leadership in a flawed world. Washington was a man of his time, but his struggles make him not less admirable but more human. His dentures have become a historical metaphor. They represent the cost of progress, both technological and national. They remind us that even the strongest leaders are not immune to personal suffering. Today, Washington's dentures are displayed in museums, not as curiosities, but as symbols. They embody the contradictions of a revolutionary era: liberty built atop slavery, strength marred by fragility, greatness shadowed by human cost. Teachers now use these dentures as teaching tools, not to mock or mythologize, but to explore the intersection of science, power, race, and identity in American history. And for medical students and dental historians, Washington's oral health offers a case study in the evolution of pain management, prosthetics, and patient dignity. The final irony is this: the man who could not smile freely, who feared public embarrassment, is now remembered across the world, his face printed on currency, carved into stone, and engraved in memory. His imperfect teeth remind us of a profound truth: that leadership is not about perfection, but about perseverance through discomfort, dignity amid weakness, and humanity in the face of hardship.